Let me see some real ID, or we'll take further action. That's what one of the officers said before handcuffing a black father in front of his crying children, without knowing he was a senior agent for the National Security Agency. At a luxury resort meant for rest and peace, the Thompson family faced suspicion, humiliation, and a viral injustice that America couldn't ignore. They weren't shouting, they weren't breaking rules. They were just existing, and that, somehow, was enough to provoke force. This story isn't just about one family. It's about a deeper truth that even a government badge doesn't shield you from bias. As James Baldwin once said, to be a Negro in this country, and to be relatively conscious, is to be in a rage almost all the time. So if you believe stories like this need to be heard, don't stay silent. Subscribe, leave a comment, and let your voice be part of the change. It was supposed to be a peaceful escape. After years of back-to-back missions, Malik Thompson, a senior agent at the National Security Agency, finally took a break from his demanding post. With dark-rimmed glasses and a quiet, observant demeanor, Malik rarely let his guard down, but this winter, he promised his wife Renee and their 2 children something different. Time, no encrypted briefings, no classified threats, just family, snow and silence. The Thompsons had booked a 5-night stay at Crystal Pines Resort, a luxurious mountain getaway in Colorado, known for its pristine slopes and privacy. Nestled between snow-covered pines, their rustic chic cabin overlooked a frozen lake that sparkled under the morning sun. For the first time in years, Malik left his burner phone in his travel bag. Renee, a respected civil rights attorney, forced herself to stop checking her inbox. Their son, Tyler, a shy 13-year-old who devoured history books, was buried in a novel on the couch, while 8-year-old Ava sketched snowmen by the fireplace, her crayons scattered everywhere. "Don't forget the sleigh rides at 11, Renee called out, zipping up her parka as Malik sipped his coffee. Malik smiled. "First time in years, I've had to worry about being late for fun." The family stepped out into the crisp mountain air, dressed in matching thermal layers and beanies. The sleigh was already waiting near the main lodge, a vintage wooden cart draped in blankets, pulled by 2 massive horses with wreaths around their necks. The air smelled of pine and fresh snow. Guests were laughing, taking pictures. Renee snapped a few of Malik with the kids before handing her phone to a nearby staff member. "Can you get one of all 4 of us?" she asked warmly. As they lined up in front of the sleigh, the staff member raised the phone, but before the shutter clicked, a low, authoritative voice cut through the cheerful chatter. "Excuse me, sir. May I ask which cabin you're staying in?" Everyone turned. A security guard, tall with broad shoulders and a rigid stance, had approached Malik directly. His tone wasn't friendly. It was interrogative. Malik's brow furrowed. "We're in cabin 16. Just checked in last night." The guard didn't look convinced. His eyes scanned over Malik's clothes, then shifted to Renee, then the children. "I'm going to have to verify that. You have ID on you." Renee stepped forward, her attorney instincts kicking in. "Is there a reason you're singling my husband out in front of our children? We're resort guests like everyone else." "It's standard policy, ma'am," the guard said quickly. "We've had people sneaking onto the property lately. And you're asking every guest standing here for ID." Renee pressed, her voice calm but firm. The guard avoided her gaze. "Just doing my job." Tyler looked up at his father, confused. Ava clutched Malik's gloved hand tighter. The other guests watched awkwardly. No one spoke. No one intervened. Malik reached slowly into his coat pocket. "Look, we're not here to cause problems. I'm happy to show you whatever you need, but this doesn't feel like standard policy." He produced a reservation email on his phone. The guard glanced at it, but didn't even pretend to read. "I'll still need to check with the front desk," he said, stepping away but not without a final glance back that carried the weight of suspicion. As the guard walked off, the tension lingered like frost in the air. Renee's jaw clenched. Tyler stared down at the snow. Ava no longer smiled. "Why do they always do this, Mom?" Tyler asked quietly. Renee kneeled beside him. "Because sometimes people judge before they know the truth." but we never let their judgment define who we are. Malik tried to push down the rising anger in his chest. He'd faced terrorists abroad, uncovered plots no one would ever hear about. But this, being questioned while standing next to his children at a vacation resort, pierced deeper than any mission gone wrong. They got on the sleigh anyway. The horses began to pull them slowly through the snowy trail. But the mood had soured. The magic of the moment had cracked. Malik held Ava on his lap and wrapped a blanket tighter around her. He looked at Renee, who reached for his hand. "This was supposed to be the 1 week we didn't have to deal with this," she said softly. "I know," Malik replied. "But we're not going to let it ruin everything. Not this time." The sleigh ride continued into the woods, leaving behind the main lodge and the eyes that had followed them, but the shadows of suspicion followed quietly in their wake. The next morning, the Thompson family woke to a soft snowfall blanketing the resort in a fresh coat of white. Malik stirred his coffee in the cabin's kitchenette, while Tyler and Ava bundled up for snow tubing. Renee stood near the window, watching the flakes fall in rhythmic silence. "I've already booked the lift passes for this afternoon," she said. "Let's try to shake off yesterday." Malik nodded, though a heavy thought still lingered beneath his calm surface. "We came here to unplug, not to be profiled." Outside, the family made their way to the tubing hill. Laughter echoed across the slope, and children raced down on colorful inner tubes. For a moment, it felt like everything was normal again. Tyler dared Ava to beat his speed. Malik and Renee cheered them on, camera in hand. But as the kids dragged their tubes back uphill, a new disturbance slithered into view. 2 uniformed officers appeared near the lodge entrance, walking with purpose. One older, stockier, face unreadable, the other younger, cockier, tapping his radio as he scanned the area. Renee noticed first. "They're coming straight toward us." Malik sighed, setting down the phone. "Here we go again." "Sir," the younger officer called out as they approached, "we need a word with you." Malik stepped forward calmly, hands visible, posture non-threatening. "Is there a problem?" "We received a report of a possible trespasser matching your description," the older cop said. "Mind showing some ID?" Renee stepped beside her husband. "Are you kidding me? We've already gone through this with resort security. We're staying in cabin 16. "We're not here to argue, ma'am," the younger cop interjected, eyes never leaving Malik. "Just do as we ask, and this won't take long." The crowd around the tubing hill began to notice. Parents paused. Phones discreetly turned to record. Malik pulled his wallet out slowly and held up his NSA badge. "I'm Malik Thompson. I work for the National Security Agency. I'm here with my wife and children on vacation. I expect to be treated like any other guest." The younger cop sneered. "You expect me to believe this is real? Anyone can order a fake badge online." Renee's voice cracked through the cold. "Excuse me? This is outrageous," she snapped. "You have no cause, no reasonable suspicion. You're harassing my husband in front of our children." The older officer looked visibly tense now, glancing toward the watching guests. "Just need to verify things, that's all." Tyler and Ava stood frozen halfway up the hill, watching wide-eyed. Malik remained composed, though his jaw tightened. "You want ID? Fine." He handed over both his government ID and driver's license. The older cop took them. The younger one didn't budge. "I'm going to have to ask you to step aside, sir." Renee stepped in. "He's given you everything you asked for. Why are you still pushing this?" The younger cop reached toward his belt. "Step aside, ma'am, or I'll detain you too." That was the moment everything snapped. "You're scaring my kids," Renee shouted. "You're humiliating us based on nothing but the color of our skin." The cop didn't flinch. He grabbed Malik's wrist and spun him around. "Hands behind your back." A gasp rippled through the crowd. Tyler shouted from the hill, "Dad?" Malik didn't resist. He didn't move. His heart broke as he felt the cold steel snap around his wrists. Ava's cries echoed down the slope. Renee lunged forward, but was held back by the older officer. "Don't make this worse," he warned under his breath. Worse. Her husband was in cuffs. Her children were crying. And for what? The younger cop forced Malik to kneel in the snow. He's a federal agent. Renee screamed, "Do you even understand what you're doing?" A guest nearby yelled, "This is disgusting." Another shouted, "I got it on video." The officers froze. The older cop, now visibly shaken, reached for his radio. "Dispatch. I need immediate confirmation on a Malik Thompson, NSA credentials provided." A long pause, then the radio crackled. "Confirmed. Thompson is active NSA. Clearance level 4. The older cop's face dropped. He barked, "Get him out of the cuffs. Now." The younger officer hesitated. But now, the command came like thunder. He fumbled with the keys and released Malik, who stood slowly, rubbing his wrists. His children ran to him. Ava cried into his coat. Tyler clung to his side, fists clenched. Renee stood with fire in her eyes. "This isn't over," she said. "You will answer for this." And just like that, the illusion of safety the Thompsons had hoped for shattered completely. They weren't just on vacation anymore. They were now in a battle far more personal than Malik had ever prepared for. The sun was beginning to dip behind the mountains, casting long shadows across the snow as the Thompson family returned to their cabin in silence. Malik had barely spoken a word since the incident. His wrists were still red from the cuffs, a painful reminder that even with a badge, his skin was the first thing they saw. Ava clung to Renee's side, still shaken. Tyler hadn't said much, but his clenched jaw and distant stare said everything. Renee, meanwhile, was already writing everything down. Every word the officers said, every action taken, every witness around. This wasn't going to disappear. Not this time. "I'll call the office," she said. "We start legal action tomorrow." Malik sat on the edge of the bed, slowly removing his boots. "Make sure the kids eat something. I'm going to step outside for a bit." "Malik," Renee started, but stopped. She could see the weight in his eyes, the disappointment, the rage, the helplessness. Malik walked alone through the trees, snow crunching beneath his boots. He didn't go far, just enough to be away from the cabin, enough to breathe. He leaned against a pine, closed his eyes, and for the first time in years, he questioned everything. He'd risked his life for a country that couldn't even give him the benefit of the doubt. He remembered assignments overseas, the nights spent in secure bunkers, intercepting threats before they ever reached American soil. He had kept people safe, people who would never know his name. And yet a young officer with a power complex saw only a threat in him, not a protector. Suddenly, footsteps approached. "Sir?" a quiet voice called out. Malik turned. It was one of the resort staff members, a young woman, maybe in her 20s, with a knit cap pulled down over her ears. "I just wanted to say," she hesitated, glancing around. "I saw everything. What they did was wrong." Malik nodded once, grateful, though he couldn't summon the words. "I got it on video," she added, holding up her phone. "If your wife wants it, tell her to ask for Jordan at the front desk." Malik's brows lifted slightly. "Thank you. Really?" She offered a soft smile, then disappeared back into the snow. Back in the cabin, Renee had already made the first call to her colleague at the law firm. She spoke clearly, documenting every detail. Tyler listened from the hallway, trying to make sense of it all. "Mom," he said finally, voice cracking, "why do they hate us? What did we do?" Renee froze. She walked over, knelt down and looked him in the eye. "You did nothing, baby. You did nothing wrong. Sometimes people act out of fear and ignorance, but that's not your fault, and it's not who we are." Tyler nodded slowly, trying to hold back tears. When Malik returned, Renee filled him in. "We have video evidence, witnesses, and I already got a response from our firm's media contact. This story's gonna make noise." Malik sank into the couch, wrapping Ava in his arms. "Good. Let them hear it." But just as they were beginning to regroup, there was a knock at the door. Renee answered cautiously. Standing on the porch were two new figures, one in plain clothes, the other in a crisp deputy uniform. The man in the suit, stepped forward. Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, my name is Deputy Chief Paulson. I've been briefed on the incident. I'd like to speak with you. Malik stood slowly. So you're the cleanup crew? Paulson didn't flinch. I'm here to listen. I understand what happened was unacceptable. Renee folded her arms. You say that like it's over. I'm not here to downplay it. There will be an investigation. Internal affairs is involved, and the officers have been temporarily relieved of duty while we conduct a full review. Malik stared hard. And if we weren't NSA and an attorney, if we were just a regular black family with no leverage, would you still be standing here apologizing? Paulson hesitated. I'd like to think so, sir, but I know how this looks, and I'm not here to make excuses, only to say this won't be buried. A beat of silence passed. Renee spoke. We'll be filing a public lawsuit, and we'll bring this to the press. I'm not asking for courtesy. I'm demanding justice. Paulson gave a slow nod. Understood. I'll cooperate however I can. As he left, Malik closed the door behind him and looked at Renee. This isn't about just us anymore. No, she said. It's about every family who didn't get the chance to fight back. That night, the Thompson family sat around the fireplace. Ava had finally fallen asleep in Renee's lap. Tyler leaned against his father, exhausted. Malik looked down at his son. You okay? Tyler didn't answer right away. Then quietly, I want to help fix it. One day. Malik placed a hand on his shoulder. You will, and we'll start now. Morning broke with a new kind of energy. The cabin was quiet, but inside, something was stirring. Not fear, not sadness, but resolve. Renee sat at the dining table, still in her robe, tapping away on her laptop. Her voice was steady as she dictated details into a legal memo. Beside her were screenshots of messages from guests at the resort, people who had witnessed everything and offered to testify. Malik entered the room, phone pressed to his ear. He ended the call with a nod. I just spoke to Director Evans at NSA, he said. He's furious, said this won't be swept under the rug. Renee raised an eyebrow. Do they know it went viral yet? About to, Malik replied, holding up a link. Overnight, a video of the arrest had been posted by one of the bystanders. Within hours, it spread like wildfire, shared across social media platforms with the hashtag #Thompson Injustice. News outlets were already requesting interviews. Tyler scrolled through his phone at the breakfast table, stunned. Mom, we're trending. People are calling it modern-day segregation. Renee glanced over. We didn't ask for this spotlight, but maybe we can do something with it. Later that morning, the family returned to the resort's main lodge, not as vacationers this time, but as people demanding answers. Guests watched in silence as the Thompsons passed through the lobby, phones held discreetly, whispers trailing them like a storm. The resort manager, a pale, nervous man in his 50s, was already waiting. Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, I want to start by offering our deepest apologies for… Renee cut him off. Save it. We're not here for apologies. We're here to ask why your staff called the police on a family who was doing nothing but playing in the snow. The manager swallowed hard. There was a misunderstanding. The security guard thought what? Malik said sharply. That we didn't belong here because our coats weren't expensive enough, or because our skin wasn't the right shade for your winter catalog. The manager looked helpless. I don't have a good answer for that. Renee stepped forward. Then you'll have to answer to the court. Just then, Deputy Chief Paulson entered through the side door. His posture was stiff, lips tight. He approached the group and pulled Renee aside, gently. I need you to know something, he said in a low voice. The young officer who cuffed your husband Landon, he's under investigation. This isn't his first complaint. Renee's face hardened. So you knew? We had no confirmation until this morning, Paulson said. Internal affairs is moving fast. He'll be suspended, possibly terminated. Possibly? Malik interjected, having overheard. He put his hands on me, in front of my kids, without cause. Paulson looked genuinely uneasy. We're doing everything we can. Renee didn't blink. That's not enough. You're going to have to answer publicly. By early afternoon, reporters began arriving at the resort gates. The story had taken on a life of its own. What began as a quiet vacation had become a flashpoint for a national conversation. The Thompson name was on every trending page, every feed, every screen. As the cameras rolled, Renee stood on the front steps of the lodge. The cold bit at her skin, but she didn't flinch. "My name is Renee Thompson," she said, her voice clear. "I'm a civil rights attorney, a mother, a wife. And yesterday my husband, an NSA agent who has served this country for over a decade, was handcuffed and humiliated without cause, simply because he was black in a space that didn't expect him." The crowd quieted. "We are filing lawsuits against both the police department and Crystal Pines Resort. This isn't just about us. It's about every person who's been judged by the color of their skin instead of the content of their character." A cheer rose from the back of the crowd. The press surged forward with questions. Later that evening, back in the cabin, Malik closed the curtains and sat beside the fire. Tyler and Ava were finally laughing again, Ava coloring with new crayons. The front desk had offered an apology. "I still feel like I failed them," Malik said quietly. Renee turned toward him. "You didn't fail anyone. You protected them. You kept your composure in front of the world." "I wanted to scream," he admitted. "You didn't," she replied. "That's power." Malik looked at her, then at his kids. Tyler caught his gaze and smiled, a smile filled with pride. That night, as snow gently fell outside, the Thompsons huddled together under one blanket on the couch. They had been hurt, embarrassed, and dragged through public injustice, but they were together, stronger, louder, and no longer invisible. They hadn't come to start a movement, but sometimes justice doesn't wait for permission. 3 weeks later, the snow at Crystal Pines had long melted, but the storm stirred by the Thompsons had only just begun. The lawsuit was officially filed in federal court. Malik and Renee Thompson v. Crystal Pines Resort and Aspen County Police Department. The complaint was over 60 pages long, filled with witness statements, video evidence, and allegations of racial profiling, unlawful detainment, and emotional trauma to minors. Major news outlets picked it up instantly. Renee gave interviews on national networks, while Malik, normally private, sat beside her in solidarity. In every photo he wore the same quiet expression, one of a man who had faced worse dangers, but never one so personal. At home in Maryland, the family had returned to routine. Sort of. Tyler was back at school, but now walked taller. Ava no longer flinched when someone in uniform passed by. Thanks to the therapy sessions Renee insisted on, Malik had returned to work, but this time with a fire in his belly he hadn't felt in years. On a Thursday afternoon, Renee received a call. "This is Deputy Chief Paulson," the voice said. "The officer who cuffed Malik has officially been dismissed. Internal Affairs found multiple violations of conduct. We're making the report public this evening." Renee didn't smile, but she nodded. "It's a start." By that weekend, protests had sparked in several cities, using the Thompsons case as a rallying cry. Activists wore shirts with the hashtag #WeBelongEverywhere, and signs read, "Not all badges bring justice." Schools discussed it. Lawmakers debated it. Malik and Renee's story had become a catalyst. Then came the invitation. An email from a senior advisor at the Department of Justice arrived late Sunday night. They were hosting a national forum on civil rights and law enforcement reform. They wanted Renee to be a panelist, and Malik to deliver a keynote speech. "Why me?" Malik had asked. "Because they finally heard you," Renee said. "Now tell them something worth remembering." A week later, they stood in Washington, D.C., inside a packed auditorium. Malik adjusted the mic, looking out over a sea of policymakers, community leaders, and press. "I used to think wearing a badge was enough," he began, "that my service, my title would protect me. But a badge didn't protect me from being seen as a threat, not even in front of my children." His voice didn't tremble, it rose. "We are not asking for special treatment. We are demanding equal dignity, the same assumption of innocence, the same right to enjoy a vacation, walk through a neighborhood, or sit in a car without being questioned, handcuffed, or humiliated.
Silence.
Not the empty kind, but the heavy kind. The kind that means people are listening. After the event, Malik and Renee stood under the Capitol's stone archways, watching Ava chase pigeons and Tyler take photos of monuments. "We didn't ask for this fight," Malik said. "But we're ready for it," Renee replied. Back home, changes began rippling outward. Crystal Pines Resort publicly overhauled its policies and issued a formal statement pledging racial equity training. Aspen County appointed a new civilian review board. Malik received a letter from the president, thanking him for his service and acknowledging the incident. It wasn't everything, but it was more than nothing. One evening, Tyler came downstairs with a school essay in hand. "Can you read this, Dad?" Malik took the paper and began reading silently. It was titled, "When Heroes Don't Wear Capes." He didn't make it far before his throat tightened. Tyler had written about him, not as a government agent, but as a father who kept his head high even when others tried to push him down, about how watching him stay calm while handcuffed taught him more than any textbook ever could. Malik folded the paper carefully. "That's the greatest honor I've ever received." Tyler grinned. "Maybe I'll be a lawyer like Mom, or NSA like you." "You'll be even better," Malik said, "because now you know the truth, and you're not afraid to speak it." That night, the Thompsons sat on their back porch, wrapped in blankets, the quiet hum of crickets in the air. Renee leaned her head on Malik's shoulder. Ava snuggled beside them with her sketchpad. Tyler typed away on his laptop, already drafting a letter to their local paper. They hadn't just survived what happened, they had transformed it. They turned humiliation into testimony, silence into spotlight, pain into purpose. And though the road ahead was still long, one thing was certain: the Thompsons would walk it together, louder and stronger than ever. Because now, the world was watching, and they were no longer invisible. "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere," Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, and the Thompson family story is living proof of that truth. A new reminds us that silence is not safety, and dignity is not automatic. It must be defended, sometimes fiercely, even in the most unexpected places. Malik didn't raise his voice, but he raised a mirror to a broken system. Renee didn't carry a weapon, but her words cut sharper than any sword. In their strength, we see the kind of courage that makes change possible, not just for them, but for all of us. So if their story moved you, if you saw yourself, your family, or your values in what they endured, don't just scroll on. Drop a comment, share your thoughts, and subscribe to our channel. Your voice is part of this movement too. Let's build a community where stories like this don't just end. They echo. Together, we